Darkness. I don't know how many of you have ever loved to go through caves. I love it. I've been through several caves. In fact, I got lost in Carter Caves, or Cascade Caves down here in Carter County. One time when I was going through with a friend was, in fact, I think you know the friend, was Dewey Parr. Dewey used to preach here a long time ago. And Dewey said, Phil, I know Carter Cave real well, and Cascade Cave. This says to go down and go through the caves. We got lost. I told Dewey one time that he was a better preacher and he was a cave guide because of that. But they're down in Tennessee. If you follow I-75 down through Kentucky, down through Knoxville, and on down to Chattanooga, between Knoxville and Chattanooga, there's a cave system down there that is called the Lost Sea. And that was the last sea, the last cave unit that I ever went through. They had a lot of things there that were interesting. I took a delegation down from the Corbin Church when I preached in Corbin. And we had close to 30 to 35 people go down from the Corbin Church to go through that cave system. And it was extremely interesting. Extremely. They have a lake in there that is underground, undersea. That lake has to be controlled by water, or it will flood the cave. And they have fish in that lake that have no eyes. Their eye structures are completely gone because they never use them. And the fish will hear the boat or feel the wave of the boat going through, and they will come up because they get fed by the boat driver. The one spot in that particular tour that we took at that particular time, it was very interesting. The guide told us to put our hand up in front of our face, and we did. Then they turned off the lights. And no matter how hard we looked, we could not see our hand as it was in the front of our face. And it was extremely interesting, some of the formations and some of the things that they had. They had one spot in the cave that they had fenced off because the big hole that was there was big enough for a person to fall through. And the comment was made, we have never found the bottom of this particular hole. That goes down, all the way down. And you can put your hand over that hole and feel the heat coming up from it. Interesting. I say this because without Jesus Christ, without God working in the world today, we find that we are a world of darkness. I deeply appreciated our video this morning when it showed the religious nature of George Washington, John Quincy Adams, and Madison, and some of the others. Showing how depth of their Christianity. The Episcopalian Church happened to be very strong at that particular time. But the emphasis of the fact that our nation was built upon the truth and the fact that Jesus Christ was the light that led them into the foundation of our nation. That without Christ, without God, without that closeness that we have with Him, we see that we're living in a world of darkness. Oh, our nation has come a long way from those days in which we began. But I don't think our nation has become better in religious morality. And I think we ought to be concerned about that. But if you look at the scriptures at the time that Jesus Christ was on the cross, the Bible tells us, according to Luke the 23rd chapter, for the 45th verses. That there was an earthquake, there was a time of darkness. Darkness prevailed upon the earth from the 3rd hour to the 6th hour when Jesus gave up the ghost. And that darkness has been a matter of thought to me for many, many years. I can remember when I was a teenager that I went to the minister that we had. His name was Franklin Payne. I think his name should have been spelled P-A-I-N, not P-A-Y-N-E. But he told me he says, don't worry about it. When I asked him about the darkness. I formed an opinion at that particular time about the darkness. And I emphasized the idea that in my own thinking, that it was a sign of God for a reason to the people. I don't think God would have done anything unnecessary or without purpose during that particular time. And as you think about it, there has been a lot of discussion. A lot of discussion as to this darkness. And a couple of discussions that we do find in many books and many commentaries and many other efforts put forth is, first of all, was this darkness that covered the whole world? Or just that part of Jerusalem where Jesus was being crucified? Luke makes a statement that the darkness over all the earth. And I have no reason to doubt what the Bible has to say. In fact, I tried to find, and I could not do it, and I even had an extra week to do it. I tried to find a passage, something I read many, many, many years ago. And I cannot testify to what I'm saying now to be truth, because I could not locate what I read. And I'm not sure that it applied to what I'm talking about now. But in the New World, some of the documents that we find were written by the Indians about the time that Jesus Christ was being crucified, emphasize the unusual darkness that prevailed upon the earth at the time. I personally believe that when it says all of the earth, that that's exactly what it means. And I believe that there are testimony made, and I tried to find it, I could not do so, emphasizing the idea that even in the New World, South America as well as North America, the Indians there had a time of darkness when Jesus Christ was on the cross. So be it. The second thing that I find written in many, many books that I think is interesting is the effort of many, many people to put a scientific concept of the darkness that prevailed. One of the books, commentaries I read, talked about it being a eclipse of the sun. Now, I have been through several eclipses of the sun during my lifetime. And while it does get dark, total darkness, pitch darkness, it does not get. So I don't think it was that. Another commentary that I read emphasized the idea that this darkness would have been a thunderstorm. But I noticed in the Bible that there's an absence of any rain falling at the time. And that no thunderstorm during the day will make the world totally pitch dark, as we find in the contemporary writing of that day. I have to conclude in my own thinking that the darkness was God's message to the people. Given to us for our purpose, which I've said before. And that purpose we need to understand. In my studies, I've come across 4 different explanations as to what this darkness may be. Understand this is all speculation, because while it can be, does not contradict Scripture, the Scriptures are silent upon it. The very first one was one that I developed when I was still in high school. Was that God was sending a message to the people, the Jews. And let's face it, the Jews were the ones that caused the crucifixion of Jesus. Even though Jesus had prayed, Father, forgive them, for they knew not what they do, the Romans were forgiven because nothing's in the Bible about the Romans being accused of it. But the Jews certainly were. In fact, the Sanhedrin said that this group is trying to bring this man's death blood down upon our heads. And they recognized the fact that they were being accused of the death of Jesus Christ. Then I kind of look back to the book of Genesis in this first opinion that I'm given. And one of the things that I see in the very, very first few verses of the book of Genesis is that darkness prevailed upon the face of the deep. In my opinion, that goes all the way back to when I was a teenager. And that's long ago. In my opinion, God was telling the Jews who believed in creation, who believed in Genesis, the very first chapter, a few chapters, about the original creation was pure and perfect. But as a result of sin coming into the world, death became prevalent. And God is making a tie between the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, which is to forgive us of that sin, and all sin, back to the very creation in which all things start. And there is a bridge caused by the darkness, bringing out the truth of why Jesus went to the cross. That was my first explanation. I have other scriptures there that emphasize the idea that we are forgiven from that sin. The second thing that comes to my mind, and I think this is important, as to why, is the fact that Jesus was the light of the world. And you think just for a moment, Jesus was the light of the world, and at this particular time the light was being distinguished. What better tie would there be to identify that Jesus' light was being taken away than the 3 hours of darkness? It's an interesting proposal. Jesus says, as long as I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. King James Version. John 9:3. And I see here the idea that is expressed. That light is being taken away. And God demonstrated the lack of that light by the darkness that came upon the face of the earth. I see this in several commentaries that I have some faith in. But there's a value there. Because as the darkness ended, Jesus said, "It is finished." He gave up the ghost, or the spirit. The third, I think, is one of the more popular, is that when God looked down upon the cross and saw what his son was going through, his only begotten, He turned his face away from Calvary. He did this so that he would not retaliate against what was happening. He did this so that he would not take Jesus down from the cross, so that Jesus could finish the work for which he was sent. But just for a moment, think of what Jesus suffered. He suffered physically. At one time, my family had what was called the crown of thorns plant. I don't know whether you've ever seen one or not. The one thing you did not want to do with those plants, and this is supposed to be indigenous to the Jerusalem area, you didn't want one of those needles to prick your skin. Because there was a poison or some kind of an irritation in those needles that would cause your skin to be hurt for several weeks after you were pricked. They made a crown of thorns of this thorn bush, needles that long, 2-3 inches long, and put it on his head. And I appreciate the pictures that show blood running down his face. For the simple reason, I know, because it happened to me several times, of what one of those needle pricks could do. Not only that, but then they took their fist and they buffeted his body and saying, "You're a prophet, who hit you?" They gave him a cat of nine-tailed beating. 40 stripes save one. And the fact, many people have seen the Passion of Christ put out by Mel Gibson. And I've been told by several people that have seen it that they could not withstand to watch the time that Jesus was going through physically at the time. And the emphasis being made of the fact that he was near death as a result of the physical suffering he had done. The Catholic Church believes that Jesus had fallen under the weight of the cross several times. A lot of Christians today believe that he fell under the weight of the cross and caused Simon the Cyrene to be able to pick up the cross and carry it for him and rub his deal. And the truth is, the Bible does not even mention Jesus stumbling under the weight of the cross. He suffered mentally. I wonder how he felt when the people mocked him. If you be the Son of God, come down from the cross. He saved others. Himself he cannot save. I think he suffered mentally when he saw that all his disciples, said John, had fled and gone the way. Well, how did he suffer when he heard Peter deny him the third time? I firmly believe that his mental suffering was as great as his physical. He suffered emotionally through the same effort that was done when he suffered mentally. He suffered spiritually. You look at Calvary, there were 3 people that had died. They were there at the time. Jesus had sin on him. One of the thieves had sin in him. The other one had the blood of Christ, as God, through Jesus Christ, forgave him. Sometimes I think of the suffering of Jesus Christ. When he cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? It's like the couple that was driving down the road. The wife looked over at the husband who was driving and said, honey, when we were going to eat, I would sit over there in the middle. And you would have your arm around me. We would nestle together and cuddle together while we were driving. Now look at us. I'm sitting as close to the door as I can. You're sitting as close to the door as you can. And there's a big gap between us. And the husband looked at the wife and said, yeah, but who moved? Who moved? It was the feeling of Jesus Christ that caused him to feel forsaken. In fact, the literal of Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani means, why have you left me in a forsaken condition? That's how Jesus felt. And the last thought of the darkness was, it would be very simple. Is that fact that sin always caused a separation between God and man. What happened to Adam and Eve when they sinned in the Garden of Eden? They dressed themselves. And then they hid from God. And I think that here was a time that darkness represented the fact that God could not look upon the sin that Jesus Christ was carrying for us. Please understand, sin never entered Jesus Christ. I bet it was placed upon him as a sacrifice. Without any doubt, and this is the whole point I've been trying to make all my sermon, Jesus carried our sins to the cross. And through his blood, we are saved. And maybe each of these has a lesson for us today. Maybe a little bit of each is an emphasis of what God was trying to convey to the people by the period of darkness. But one thing we need to do, never forget the price that was paid by Jesus Christ for our salvation. As you leave this building, as we enter our mission field, by passing through those doors, remember what God, through Jesus, did for us. We're going to be singing our song of invitation. What was it? The Lord, I'm coming home.
Yes, I have.
One verse only. Is any here that needs to make a decision for Christ? We encourage you to make it as we sing.